She says she won't be here, but.
She's at David's getting her hair done.
All right, everybody, welcome to this February meeting of the Economic Development Committee. First, can I get an approval of the agenda?
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Okay, we got an agenda. How about the minutes? Last time.
Motion to approve as is. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have approved minutes. Anybody making a public comment today? Hearing none. Moving to do business. Discussion. Well, we were going to talk about the video we all watched, Our Parking Lots Ruining Your City. We still like to discuss that.
Yes.
All right, let's discuss. Start.
I'd like to pose the question to our planner. Or actually, I'm sorry, you have a better title than that now. Lori, did you watch it by chance?
Did.
What were your thoughts on it?
So I have a few notes of kind of what they observed in their town, but in terms of what I've seen in Scappoose, I have seen that parking kills some projects, right? Like, for instance, just right here, the gravel lot on the corner, the owner had a vision for having a multifamily use for part of the building, even on the first floor. So not true mixed use where all the bottom was commercial and it was housing above, but to have essentially, apartments on the ground floor and on the second floor, and then just on the corner to have a brew pub and an outdoor patio and seating, etc. When he ran the calculations for parking, he could not meet his parking requirements. Currently our code says for a mixed use building, you cannot have a reduction in parking under the downtown overlay code. In certain sections of the downtown overlay, you can get up to 100% parking reduction, and that would be on the areas on the west side of Highway 30. I mean, basically where the building is taking up the entire lot. Obviously, you can't get parking there. And so
Is that only for existing buildings, or is it?
it just specifies the area that it applies to. So in that case, if it were like they were taking a building down or something like that, then it would apply to any development. So, I mean, our code has contemplated that there are situations in which it would be appropriate to do away with parking. In very few cases, though, like I said, it just really applies to a few blocks on the west side of 30 in the downtown overlay. So I do see that there could be benefit in having a closer look at our parking standards for our walkable downtown areas. I don't think it's appropriate to get rid of parking standards for areas in the town that are more car centric, like your Fred Meyer, Bi-Mart, areas like that, maybe it would be a little harder to have it reduce parking. We also don't have a good transit system. We don't have, I would say, adequate transit, like you might see in some downtown areas where maybe it is okay to get rid of some of that parking. So I think we have opportunities here for being more flexible than we currently are with our parking standards.
One of the things that was interesting to me, as you guys probably recall, my love for what Sandy has done, our big joke with NJ. And they had that initiative for outdoor seating.
Yeah.
And if you recall, I was kind of talking about that. Maybe we could do something like that. They were giving $10,000 plus the plans to create outdoor seating at restaurants. And, they found that it was a big economic drain because people were driving by and they'd see people outside and, create a sense of community, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen what's done with the lodge. And what came up was, well, there's no spaces here, in our kind of our legacy building, so to speak, because of parking. So I brought up the Wigwam, for instance, which is one of our most outstanding establishments in town, as well as the burrito place, in the backyard there, the back area, And you had mentioned, well, because of parking standards, you can't do something back there. So given what we just watched with that video and kind of thinking, maybe a little more strategically long term, you think it's possible to also look at some of those existing places and maybe discuss that?
Yeah, so I think that what I'd like to do is when we get into the downtown strategic plan, I think a component of that needs to be kind of reimagining how can we use some of those parking lots that are currently existing. Does it make sense to try to see where we can consolidate and make a public parking lot and then utilize the current parking lots behind buildings in a different way? Perhaps there's more development that could occur there if we shift the parking somewhere else. One of the things that was from the video I captured was downtown should be a park once district, right? I mean, as long as there's a place to park and you can walk to everything you need to get to, you're maximizing then what's possible. So yeah, I think it's definitely something to look at, for sure.
I speak, please?
Sure.
So I thought the video wasn't really relevant to our community. It was a 100,000 person town, not a 7,500 person town. They had public transportation that was developed. They had a large college.
Yep.
They also had parking standards. Prior to eliminating their parking standards, they gave examples that were more stringent than ours. Meaning we've already compromised part way. And through the 50-year plan, we've also reduced some parking requirements in that. So the city has been loosening up their parking standards. I'm concerned for existing businesses.
Mhm.
You let somebody say, okay, well, we want to develop and we want to put a bunch of apartments in and we don't have enough parking code, so let us work with us, let us do that. Well, that's great for that property. But how about all the businesses in the area? Now suddenly you don't have adequate parking, you don't have public transportation in a meaningful way. And so then suddenly you've got an issue where businesses are hurting that built adequate parking for their business. But now they have no street parking because the other people are flooding the streets because you let them overbuild. A great example of this that's very recent and is that there was a low parking requirement for the lodge. Significant numbers of people had a bad parking experience there. I like the lodge, I go there. I have friends who won't go there because they say there's no parking. I say, well, no, that was last summer. Right now, there's plenty of parking. That created that perception that there was inadequate parking. Once you create that perception of inadequate parking, it doesn't matter if you have adequate parking, meaning that it will impact existing businesses. So I do agree that there are some situations in very limited scale. I believe that that particular property is actually absolutely crucial to develop for the downtown to become a real downtown.
Yeah.
And that we need to find a way to make that work for everybody, but it not on a large scale. It's good. It's basically taking from one property owner and giving to another.
Sorry, which area?
The area that needs to be developed, it's crucial for downtown. That corner lot to the highway on First Street.
Just right across the street here from City Hall.
That's absolutely crucial. Without that being developed,
I agree.
it will be very difficult to have this feel as a downtown. I think that we're actually closer to having a downtown than we realize, because if we had that done, and there were a couple other projects done, you'd have a downtown. It's not like it's an impossible dream, but we have stalled out for many years. Actually, that's one of the goals that I was actually going to talk to you guys about for our group, was maybe trying to approach the owner and see if we could talk to him and see what it would take to get them to move forward.
I know a guy we can have a talk to. Don't worry. Before we get to that, David, we are talking about parking lots ruining our city. Is there anything in particular, while you have your mouth full, that you wanted to share?
Yes. I think it's there are parking requirements for not just about the downtown, but there are parking requirements for every type of construction. And so go with this, but I think that where I was coming from before, like 2 or 3 months ago, was we are adding to the outside, the perimeter of Scappoose in single-family dwellings, and those are getting smaller and smaller, and they're getting to be 2 and 3 story. So we have some land in the middle that is approaching the age of needing to be redeveloped or rethought, reimagined. And so the opportunity is here to change some rules for things that are going on in the center. And so we can do things that are, that, for example, the car-centric nature of Scappoose is a fact, and I don't want to eliminate parking lots completely, but there are going to be some growing pains happening in Scappoose. We have wetlands that we're dealing with. We are bordered. We have mountains on one side, we have a river on the other, and there's only so much growth that we can accommodate without looking in. And so to reduce the parking requirements, I think in this center area is worth a look. And it is a much different I agree with Brian that the two cities are different, one that they were referencing. But the point is we don't want to get to that same point and make the same decision that they did. The things that they were trying, Strong Towns was showing that the things like the wigwam actually bring in far more tax revenue to the city on a per square foot basis of land than a new Burger King restaurant, for example. Yet, and people may want a Burger King, but in terms of what's healthy for the city in general, it's the other.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other discussion or thoughts on the video?
Ben, would you like to, because you're coming in new, I'd love to hear your opinion.
Sure. I would say that you're all correct. It's really just coming up with a good plan for our downtown area, because you can, if you're concerned about parking, if the plan's already in there to identify a good parking hub where people are aware that that's where we can go, you can still provide that help to those businesses that don't have the parking, as long as there's the perception, the knowledge of where that parking is at. The issue comes, I know, with like the lodge, or like when I was into a town, like where the heck do I go to park? I want to go visit this place, but it's full, and I go down the road and everything else, and you have to like walk a mile to get here. Not really, but that's the perception. Like you have to park so far, and can I park there? Can I not park there? There's not a lot of identification. So it's just easier not to go there. I don't want to take my truck or other things that are harder to park because it's just, what am I going to do? I'll go somewhere else. So it can create a problem if there's not a good public awareness of how to get there in the right manner. I do think that sometimes in our downtowns, parking can be too strict. So finding ways to be accommodative of the whole area that, and I know that one area had mentioned, well, we're only in business at this time. These other places are in business this time. If we just work together, the same parking lot can accommodate both uses, and it'd be fine. So why do we have to both have that same standard if we can actually co-op together? So just coming up with strategic or unique ways to make it work and make sure that it is well planned out, you can kind of get prevent something in the future where you're just like, what are we going to do, and have to derail everything. So yeah, I think that the big point is just smart planning for what our use is in Scappoose here, and how we're going to make sure that we can help encourage the proper development for that.
I would just say, to follow up on that, yeah, so any reduction that we propose in parking to this area, it would have to be right-sized for Scappoose. It would have to make sense here. And we have made quite a few code amendments over the last 10 years to introduce some flexibility, even outside of the downtown overlay code. But in the parking chapter, there is a way to get at doing a one-off parking study and analysis to see, taking into account on-street parking, when those areas are used in a certain like block radius. And the property owner here of this gravel lot, you were talking about, Brian, he did go through that exercise. He looked at a way to where we could get there. We evaluated his parking analysis. We were happy with moving forward with that. But he did kind of disappear. I did reach out to him in the last 2 months. There was a Main Street grant we were considering to see maybe he would want to be on board with. Crickets. I didn't hear anything back. So, you know, I don't know what his situation is right now, or you know where he's at, what he's doing. He's a custom home builder, and so I don't know, you know, if he's tied up with other projects. But anyway, there are provisions where if someone's willing to spend that money and to take that extra step, they could look at some alternatives to make a project work. So there have been efforts made to get here, but I think it's worth another look for sure.
Thank you.
One-
We got a hand
sorry.
hand online.
Did you want
Yeah,
to call
go
on
for it.
Judy? Yeah.
Judy?
Judy. One.
Oh, you're muted. Sure. Looks like you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm unmuted now?
There we go. Go ahead.
Okay. In addition to, look, I'm sorry, I apologize for joining late, had some technical difficulties. So I don't know if this was covered, but in addition into looking at like downtown parking, and I really think that we should also be looking at businesses and looking at what the business does and how many people work in the business versus this business to the ratio of the parking that it must have, because I know for one that the business is required to put in parking that they're never going to need, because the people don't come to their office, and when they do, it's one car. It's not going to be 4 cars. You know, they have a service where they go to the person's home. So really to ask them to put in more parking than what was required, you know, it costs the business money, and we want to make it easy to do business in Scappoose, not make it harder to do business here. You know, we don't want to chase people away, you know, to open their business in, you know, the next city over. So I think we should also be mindful of that.
So I did have an idea that if we wanted to reduce parking requirements, that I think could really help mitigate the impacts on existing businesses. Unfortunately, it creates work for the city, which I don't try to do because I know the city's got enough going on and you don't need more things to manage. Currently, we don't have any timed parking zones in the city, meaning 2-hour parking areas. I would strongly suggest, if there's any desire to reduce parking requirements above and beyond what we are already working on and has been done, there are some parking reductions in the 50-year plan, that we institute a 2-hour parking areas in downtown. What that would do is if we're going to start allowing apartments to come in large numbers, it would prevent people from parking their cars on the street, taking off to work for all day, and now the businesses don't have access to those parking spaces because people have 2 cars. They got 1 parking space in their apartment, so they park a car on the street. and then they take off to work, and now that parking space is gone for all the businesses in the area. So unfortunately, that would mean enforcement. And so that's, an issue.
Do you think we
Because-
have that problem today, or is that just?
No, I don't. I think right now our parking's in a good equilibrium. I don't think we have a parking issue in downtown. But I think that if we're gonna, let's say that project, and let's say we said to them, hey, we're gonna let you have some extra apartments. We're gonna make this work for you. Then I think a way we can mitigate that is say, okay, but for a block and a half radius, that project, we're gonna put up a 2-hour parking zone, during weekdays. And what that would do is that would prevent if somebody wants to rent an apartment there and they have 3 vehicles, they're not going to decide, well, I get 1 parking space on site. I'm going to park 2 on the street. That's probably not a great renter for that project, given their limited parking. And it's not really fair to the surrounding businesses who built adequate parking for their operations. So it's a way that you could offset that, but it creates an enforcement issue. I don't know the numbers, like, would the city get to keep the parking ticket revenue, or does that go to the state to help pay for the cost? And on that part, I don't know, but it would take care of a lot of the issue.
Yeah, we do, actually, we did sign this right in front of City Hall. It's a 1-hour.
Oh, I didn't know we had that.
Currently. I think in most cases, it's a deterrent. I don't know that we've written, many tickets, but I think the issue was we were seeing folks go to, like, say, the coffee store or businesses across the street and just stay all day parked here. And for people coming and going from City Hall, we wanted that, available for people that just need to do a quick in and out.
That makes sense.
So it's already being done
Done.
on a very small scale. So it's not to say that it couldn't be looked at.
I think that's a way that you could
Yeah.
offset it so
Right.
that it didn't create a problem for the other businesses in the area.
I sent a link to NJ, and I'm not sure if it's going to show the proper property, but Cathedral Cafe, it has a satellite image that maybe you can show everyone. But if you look at the satellite image of that block where it was Pyramid Holdings, has the gravel lot that was referenced earlier. So that's about, in looking at it, it's about 1/3 of the city block, and only 25% or less is actual buildings on that site, and the rest is parking. So if you look at the parking versus buildings that was required there, it's like, I don't know, maybe 60% parking, 40% structures. And so at this rate, you would end up with another very, very small building on that city block. And so 2/3 of it would be a parking lot, and 1/3 of it would be place for people to actually be. So those buildings were built within the last 10, 12 years, correct?
No, those are quite old, actually. That used to be a TVBS building. And so, under the old use,
Mhm.
required more parking, presumably. That is overparked currently. They have more stalls than they need for the current uses. So if a new building with the brew pub and everything were to go on this corner, they could utilize some of those stalls for the new use as well. But the number of apartments they were trying to get didn't support the amount of room they had to add additional parking to.
How many apartments were they talking
Oh,
about?
I don't recall. It's been probably 3 or 4 years since we looked
Okay.
at that. Maybe 20-ish or something. I don't recall exactly.
Something crazy.
Okay.
I have a little commentary here. I can tell you my experience with parking running a business in Indiana. And it was right in the college, corridor. And college was across the street, big campus, no parking. And the way the city handled it there was you could share parking lots like you'd do behind the coffee shop. So my business was a club. It opened at 5. businesses in the village that were retail closed around the same time. So we were able to lease parking spaces from the other businesses to meet parking code. And I think that's probably a logical alternative for that lot if something was going to go in there. I don't think putting apartments there is doable because you have the train going by Blues Brothers style every 4 or 5, a couple times a day, and it's right on the tracks. But I think having a brew pub or something like that or retail is very doable.
Thank you, MJ.
Yeah, we do have that provision as well. The parking, yeah, as long as the hours don't overlap.
So, yeah, so if you'll see the current lot, it was saying that the parking lot is larger than it needs to be. So, but at some point, the parking lot was probably what was required.
There used to be additional buildings on that property that were torn down. On the gravel lot area, front part of that, Columbia portion, had a structure. It was in such disrepair when they tried to remodel it, they demoed it. And it was where they used to store the lumber.
Yeah.
Lori, while we've got the map open, could you bring this group up to speed on the long-term vision for parking here?
Yeah, so that area that NJ's pointing out is currently owned by ODOT Rail. The city has been working, mostly Chris, the city engineer, has been working, almost for 10 years now with ODOT Rail, trying to see what would be possible and if the city could acquire some portion of that. This really kind of got heated or kind of came more into discussion when that corner lot that we've been talking about was having issues making their parking work. And so we are getting closer, but essentially a lot of work's been done to date to quit claim that property to the city. Not all of it, but I believe it's about 30 to 35 feet in width along the west side of Northeast First Street that would then go basically come to the city to be developed as head-on angled parking on the west side.
Well,
Like
great.
eminent domain kind of stuff?
Pardon? What was-
Eminent domain?
No,
No.
Like
They
actually acquiring it? Okay.
Yeah, they're actually going to quit claim deed it to the city.
Oh, wow.
We would own it. We could develop it as public parking. This would really help out the businesses in the area, could make that project pencil. And would also provide additional parking for like the farmer's market or any kinds of events we have on the side of downtown.
it could also help the issue. First Street over there is a 20-foot right-of-way, which is completely substandard.
Completely.
And so it would possibly either end up as a one-way or possibly end up with it's just going to be better.
It's
Is
going to
what-
be wider, paved with for 2-direction traffic is what we're still proposing.
Okay.
Plus with additional area for parking on the west. So, little things like that can make a big improvement in
Look
this
good, too.
downtown core. It'll look a lot nicer because, the rail's going to maintain that spur line. They weren't willing to give that up. So that's why we're not getting the full width. But at least we could put up a fence and have nice parking along there, some landscaping and dress it up.
Are they thinking of keeping their access to their spur line down at Watts?
Yes, the width of the dedication would be the same width all the way to the north end that they currently own to.
Thank you.
What was that with again, Lori?
It's around 30 or 35 feet in width. And
amazing.
extends all the way to the north, where that tract kind of dead ends.
Get the whole thing.
An amazing
That's a lot-
development.
that's a lot of land.
Congratulations.
Yeah, Chris needs to get that, get that done. It'll be a great project. So, last we heard, it's just a matter of getting the last bits done on the survey to describe the property because there was some discrepancy in the old descriptions going back to the 1800s. So,
Imagine that.
yeah.
They're always in.
Looking for the rock, looking for the rock that,
Yeah.
that would, that hasn't existed in 100
Literally.
years,
So
that's the landmark.
We're getting close.
So Lori, question on that. So let's say that happened.
Yep.
So the empty lot plus the two lots, behind the coffee, the behind the coffee shop and the whatever, would you then say that those are developable now, like 100% because they,
So there's the gravel lot on the corner.
right?
That's all developable. It does have a portion of the parking lot for the other use that's actually on this vacant lot. And then where Cathedral Coffee is and the vet and all that in the back, that's part of the same lot as the Cathedral and that lot. So that's not a separate, we would still, unless there was parking somewhere else, that parking would still go with that use. We wouldn't.
That's what I'm saying is like, if we're going to make all that parking, just kind of thinking outside the box,
Sure.
also thinking about density, why couldn't you develop it fully, both those lots?
That could be a decision. That could be a decision to be made. If and when that parking does get fully built out on First Street, then those are conversations we can start having in terms of, does it make sense to just have all of the parking for those uses there? I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You still, because then you're taking up all of the public parking with the business use. And maybe that still works because on the weekend you don't have as many people there and it's still available for civic uses like farmers market and things like that.
I mean, that would be your destination parking.
Sure.
And you could probably create a zone around that destination parking and say, you can now increase the density in
Right.
these areas.
And it's not far either.
Right.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, I have a question.
Other than Lorelei Village, most of the lots, and of course, the land that the city will be acquiring, most of the lots in that area are very small.
Hmm.
We're looking at 10,000 square foot lots for the most part. So increase of density in that immediate area, other than Lorelei Village
Mhm.
property, probably fairly limited. Because you're not going to tear down a viable building,
Because of parking.
tear down a viable building that's worth $500,000 to acquire the lot. Just not going to pencil out.
Question? Go ahead.
So quick question to Ben. I know you just got here and the project's been kind of in 10 years conversation. Is there a line in the budget that we've been putting aside in order to develop that area that we're discussing?
As far as first,
The parking. That's
Parking on
the parking on First.
nothing that we've been slotting away. We would have to budget for that, whether it's through grants or
There's the,
mix or just cash or mix of when there's businesses that develop it, they could maybe help with some of that as well. I mean, there's lots of ways to fund it. We just need to figure out at that time. how
Just
we would do
wondering
it.
how far in the conversation Chris is done with closing that deal, and then, once it's done, are we ready to take that on?
Well, I would say I would think that by the end of this year, knock on wood, or even by the end of this summer, we may be the proud owners. However, in terms of funding to actually get that work done, I don't know how soon we could do that. Once we own it, it's a sure thing. I would think we could start planning towards that and looking for opportunities for grants and seeing what's out there.
are collecting a gas tax for improvements like that. Not sure if it qualifies, but that's one aspect of it. You could also leverage future construction on site.
Right, yeah. So for other businesses or for Main Street grants, there's a lot of ways to go about it. We'd have to plan that out as it develops. But I think the end of all this conversation, to Paul's question, is yes, the city is open for conversations. The code is how it is right now, but that doesn't mean it's how it's going to be. So if we have these ways that we see this development happening, we can go back and we're open to modifying that for things that make sense, with consideration of the things that are brought up here as well. Of, well, we want to make sure that the current business owners aren't missing out as well. How do we also incentivize? And you're going to go over those council goals. That is one of the main things we talk about with the council, with the economic development side. We want to come up with ways to incentivize our downtown multi-use purposes and to entrepreneurs and to facilitate growth in this type of area. So any of these conversations are open to have, and then we're open to look at changing them with things that make sense.
So I was the owner of a few fourplexes in Portland that were located on 5,000 square foot lots. And they had, so it's not, so I'm going to start with my thought and then give you some background, but it's not only the parking requirements, but it's also sometimes the other adjunct things like on a busier street, you have to do head in, head out, ingress, egress to the parking lots, which can kill it. So for example, on a residential street, this was, these fourplexes were built before 1979. So somebody went in and really upset their neighbors by building a fourplex in a residential neighborhood. They put back out parking, so 4 spots across the front of a 50-foot lot. And building is a rectangle, but it's 4 units. And each person has their own deck or patio space. There was a laundry room on site, and they have these kind of spread out throughout Portland. So there's 1 space per unit, probably not enough. But Brian has mentioned a couple of times that the lots are too small, the lots are too small, and the lots are too small if you have parking restrictions. And so if you require 2 spaces per unit, it dies right there. But there are some 10,000 square foot lots where it would make sense. But even with the current parking requirements, it's still iffy. Because it just is. I think it's based on number of bedrooms, isn't it?
Some of those things are changing though because of state legislation. Like for instance, we currently would require 2 stalls for each duplex unit. So for a duplex, 4 stalls. That's gone away. We can only require 1 per unit according to state statute now. So some of those things are changing. Obviously, Oregon's getting very focused on housing and providing more opportunities for that, especially that middle housing. So some of that stuff's already changing, and cities are required to accommodate that.
And so for a fourplex, how many spaces be required?
That does currently still go by bedroom. Right. So
So-
for duplexes, because of the size of our city being under 10,000, we are only required to comply with the duplex standards. If we were larger, then it likely would limit parking allowances for other types of middle housing as well. So it's 2 stalls if it's 3 bedrooms or above, 1 stall if it's 1 to 2 bedrooms. 1 stall, 1.5, sorry. 1 if it's a studio, 1.5 if it's 1 to 2 bedrooms, and 2 stalls if it's 3 or above.
Yeah, and so the 1.5 would kill anything but a studio fourplex. So and I'm not so when I have my developer hat on, I'm looking at so a fourplex, almost any fourplex is worth $800,000, $900,000, $1 million. And so it does make sense if you're going to take a house that's really, really tired to tear it down and do something else with it. But we can't. And so eventually you'll get someone who will come in and rehab it. So, and the rehabbing happens, anyway, the more money they put into it, the longer that use is going to be there because they have an investment now that they're trying to recoup. And I'm not trying to do this as a business in Scappoose. This is not what I do. I'm just looking at the opportunities for our central core to become something else because people who do have money buy on the fringe because they don't want to live in those old houses and they don't want to live next to those old houses. So if we start building something that people want to live in, then the neighbor will be, oh yeah, I can sell my house for that much money. It does make sense. Makes sense to the developer, makes sense to the landowner, makes sense to the city because now you're collecting taxes on 1.2 million instead of 300,000 tax value. And like I said, Scappoose is in a noose. You have a moat around your city, and the tax values need to increase. How? Won't let them. So that's my point.
Okay. Any other
One more,
salient?
one more. Lori, would it make sense to start thinking about putting Northeast First Street in the downtown overlay? And if so, what would that entail?
It is in the downtown.
All the way up? All the way north? What's wrong?
It was added some years ago. You might have
Was.
seen an old version.
Okay.
It was added, what was that, maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was in when I got here, so it must have been before that. But again, as part of the downtown strategic plan, we would look at the boundaries. Does it make sense as they are today? Is there some tweaking we want to do with that? So yeah.
The downtown overlay has some really good things for development, for density, like zero lot lines for commercial development. So it is already, and I'm not saying it can't be tweaked, but it is already geared towards a higher density to
Sure.
make things possible economically.
Right, and my last comment, just going back to Dave's comment, yes, our duplexes are required by state law, but those are great comments as you go through this to have. Because if we're gonna allow a 3-bedroom duplex to have 1 stall, why wouldn't we allow a 4-bedroom, or the 3-bedroom fourplex to have 1 stall for the same size? I mean, to me, those things don't make sense why we would change that. And it's just a matter of sometimes need to be pointed out. And we need to consider why and the how, and there's other things that go into it, but the great comments to have as we go through this. Maybe things can still be tweaked a little bit. I would suggest they always can, because we're always developing and coming with new ways to do things. So yeah, I'd like to say we're open to making this work the best for everybody, and all these comments and pointing out is always helpful, especially as we go through with the strategic plan and these things we could point out and say, hey, let's look at this. It doesn't make sense. Like, how can we tweak this a little bit further?
Any other salient comments? Hearing none, moving on to 2.2, discussion and vote on our Economic Development Committee goals for 2025. NJ, did you want to read or present what they put on everybody's?
Just a little bit, because you all have already seen this memo when you all did the council goal setting, which you'll also see up there on your table. I took just the thriving economy subset goals from the council retreat at the end of January, and they voted on them earlier this week to approve these goals as they are. So you can see priorities, council priorities, yes. 4.1, develop a downtown strategic plan. 4.2, establish programs, policies, and procedures that incubate and support local entrepreneurship. And then 4.3, continue using urban renewal as the tool that it is to catalyze economic growth. So those are kind of what we have as council goals. And then setting the stage for your committee goals. These are more things that you all would work on, with the support of staff. But you all would kind of be the drivers of it, if that makes sense. So these are very EDC projects that you all are coming up with at this meeting.
What I heard you say is these 3 things are things the city council is doing themselves and is not requiring or asking for our help on. And that separately from these, we should develop goals for ourselves to do on our own. Is that what I heard?
You'll be involved in all of these, really.
Can I step in for a second?
Yeah.
So the council sets up the priority or the direction. So when you're coming up with goals, ideally they should be focused around these type of ideas, because this is where this is where staff time is going to be designated already. So when we're working on those, what further can we do to make these things happen that the EDC can help with? I mean, and I think these align with what the EDC is working with anyways. So it's not that the council's working that this separate. They're just saying that, yes, this is a priority. We want this to be focused on. Staff, committees, go make something happen in these areas.
So maybe a better way to ask is, what would you like us to do to help with these?
So in terms of the downtown strategic plan, I think you've heard me say multiple times that I do plan to apply for a TGM grant to have assistance with putting together this plan. But you all, or how I would envision that you'd be involved in that, you would serve as the technical advisory committee to that and really drive that process. So I definitely see your involvement with developing that downtown plan. So for sure, there would be involvement there. 4.2 is going to be established programs, policies, and procedures. I think some of those concepts and ideas could come out of the strategic plan. And even some of, you might be coming up with some of that on your own through the economic development strategic plan you're working on now. If anything you see that comes out of that could kind of fit within that bucket, that could be something also that we look at implementing together. Could also look like I have some ideas that I bring to you to get your feedback on. And then urban renewal, of course, you guys are the review body, the first review body for the urban renewal grants. So that's kind of already baked into the process that we're following now. So I see this all really fitting into what we've been discussing. And then if there were anything beyond this that you guys had ideas for your specific committee goals, that's what we'd be interested in hearing about today.
Okay. Thank you. I want to say what I heard you say is committee, because there's been some discussion about how committees work within our local government. What I heard you say was this committee is a support resource for the programs you're putting into place, which is great, acting as a resource. Now, in addition to that, you're saying we can also be self-directed on other things totally outside of these. Is that correct?
Would you categorize that then?
Trying to put guardrails on everything
No,
we're
this
about to
is
talk
all-
about.
I think it's a great question. I guess it depends on what that would be. I would suggest it should be closely related to those because that's where you can also get staff time. And it's what the council, really, you're there to support the council and what their goal and direction is. And this is where they want our current focus. So if we can get these things done, then we move to those further ideas. However, I'm a big fan of being agile and flexible. So if there are things that are coming up that we need to change that are outside this, it's like, hey, we need to talk about this. It's kind of a big deal. That's not outside of that. But when we're talking about projects, we need to have that discussion first to see if we need to adjust these things at all. But yeah, I agree that you should have some type of guardrail where it should be mostly how are we making these things come to pass.
Right, and what I believe I heard was council is doing this, Lori and team and NJ are really the point people on this, and we are here for them to actually almost direct us on how we can best support these things. So my question is, are you looking for us to actually set this is something we're going to be self-directed on? Or that's what I'm trying to understand.
I think what you're getting at, but I think what Ben is trying to tell us is city has goals that have been set by council. We don't have to work just on projects that they give us, but it should be in supportive of those goals. Is that a way of saying it? Okay.
Yes.
A great
We can
example
be
was last
self-directed.
year, remember you all made it a goal to market the urban renewal grant program. So David went around and passed out the packet, and that was in support of council goals.
And I would also note there have been discussions that not specifically on the ones that NJ mentioned, where you're just talking about branding and vision. So the first priority or goal that the council had is around establishing a vision, and that would help feed, as we work with the community and our businesses to help set that vision, that the EDC, that would just be, obviously you guys are trying to accomplish your portion of that vision. So that wouldn't take over, I mean, that is also included in what we're talking about. With branding and visioning is still on the table here because that is a priority to the council as well, and would correlate with that first priority of getting a vision for the city.
I get my 2 cents here. So this, our goal setting, which was my experience different than I have been, I think it was 2 other goal settings. I enjoyed this. Ben facilitated. It was a great. We had more collaboration, more discussion, and we believe that the goals are very general but flexible. And so the idea was to just kind of what Paul, I've heard you say, what is that that you strive to? What is it that the vision that you want? And I think this is what we came up. It's not very specific because we thought prior goals were very staff oriented. I mean, they're going to be doing those anyway, those projects. We want to see more of a vision, more of like ideas of what we would like to see Scappoose become. And so that's what these goals, I mean, they might be very broad, but that's because of the flexibility that the staff has in order to incorporate that. And then you guys will bring in the ideas, like they said, feedback to accomplish these goals. Does that make sense a little bit of what, and a little bit of background?
Oh.
Okay.
Everybody else clear on what we're being asked to do?
I got a couple comments here.
Okay.
I usually do.
Yeah, go for it.
So first of all, I think this past year was probably our best year as the EDC, as far as actually getting stuff done. And a lot of it was because we said we're going to work on a strategic plan. I was actually chastised a little bit, I think, because people didn't really understand, what do you guys, why you even work, that's not on the goal list, whatever. And what came to fruition is that we really felt, and it just kept going back to, we need that downtown strategic plan, which was never on the radar on council-wise for years. We've all been here for years, never on one of those goal lists. And so it was like pushing rock uphill for a year. But we're the ones that pushed it up to the point that now it's actually got some momentum. And now it's on Lori's radar and NJ's radar. So I think that was great. So I think we always need to keep a section that we can work on things that may not be this. It'll eventually bubble up into creating a better economic climate for Scappoose. We need to be able to work on some things because these little bubble ups can create something big down the road, because we wouldn't want Lori to immediately work on just one thing. We want to talk about it ourselves. Does it make sense? What are the potholes, whatever? And so I want to make sure that we can still do that in this framework.
Maybe tell that Christine, that whole thing probably would not have happened. We had, if the guardrails were not flexible.
I've got a question for Ben. Are these goals then actually going to be 2-year goals?
It really depends. We have a lot of things on there, and the way that we did this whole goal setting session was we looked at 50, 20 years in advance, say, okay, what is Scappoose going to look? We don't have a set vision yet. We want to work on that. And that's one thing we identified, that, we have a general idea. We've talked to a lot of people. We've done our 50-year plan. There's a lot of good pieces that we already have. And so we were able to at least just generate ideas. We wanted to come up with, okay, what is Scappoose going to look like in 20, 30 years? And then scale it back. What do we need to do in the next 2-3 years? Some things can be accomplished in 1 year. Some of them are going to roll over to 2 or 3 years, but what do we have to do now to start working on them? Because some things are bigger projects, some things can be done right away. But really, what is the priority or the focus right now so that we can get there? So yes, to answer Paul's question, you should definitely have conversations. This isn't just, you can only talk about these 3 things, nothing else. That's just where a lot of the focus and the staff time is going to be devoted, because we're trying to make these steps happen so we can get to future steps to help get to where we want to be in 20 years. And this is identified as those initial first steps. And part of that did come because of all the conversations that EDC has been having. Hey, we've identified through your strategic plan that these things are our priority. We would talk, and we brought that to the council. Hey, we've been talking about this. This is a priority. They said, yes, we think this is a priority. Let's start working on it. So we should have that flexibility That is just really the primary focus, as was recommended by the EDC, for the staff to really start working on as well and to devote some staff time too. But as things come up, we want to keep that conversation fluid because eventually these things are going to be done. What's next? You don't just want to think about it at that moment. We want to have that plan going. What is that next priority? What should we be gearing up for? And we could even add next year for something because we need to start working on it now because it takes many years to do.
And the reason I'm asking is because I always feel frustrated with this committee that the goals are set, now we're already 2 months into the year. And then you have a very limited time until it's, November, December, and then there's a new set of goals. I think these, in order to do these adequately, this is at least a 2-year plan. And
Right.
the way I've always planned is long-range planning, so
Right.
2 to 5 years.
Yeah, so this is more like I say, it's more of that strategic plan. They didn't want to use that word. They didn't feel it was quite there, but yeah, it is that strategic direction of where we want to go. We're looking long term. What do we do now? But yeah, it's those are the goals as effective as of Tuesday. They've been approved, so we're not waiting until the new fiscal year. We're going to start working on things right away. Those are the directions as of today, and they're going to carry over from year to year because they do take some things as we get them done, move them on and add new goals. But yeah, it's we really want to be fluid on how we do these things and flexible of what is needed today to accomplish where we want to get in 20 years.
Well, a goal 4.3 talks about catalyze economic growth with urban renewal. That's actually, and all these goals are very broad to me. I think that gives us a lot of flexibility without having, if you can interpret, I can't think of much that we couldn't figure out a way somehow applies to these 3 goals. There might be something, but it would be hard to find.
Well, maybe we get rid of urban renewal, just say catalyze economic growth, and then maybe put such as, whatever, I don't know, but like.
To be clear, these are their goals. They've
It's their
already.
goals. No,
Oh,
I'm
so we
sorry.
can't change them.
I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to change them. They're locked in. No, but what I meant is that kind of is, whether it be other means. So we could be adding to that 4.3, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. This is the part where we say who has a goal they'd like to put on the table.
One more question. So Lori, so for instance, because we have been working on the downtown plan and there's been some great discussions on it. So just give us maybe a 1 minute of how would you see this thing coming? Would you come quarterly and talk about the downtown plan to us or would?
So, first of all, I see them as complementary, but slightly different in that your economic development strategic plan is kind of citywide, whereas this is really looking more at how do we capitalize on growth kind of in this downtown core. I am planning on applying for a grant, which would have then a scope of work and a consultant that would facilitate, and then with us, of course, providing all of the input into that plan. So presumably, once that gets kicked off, and you all serving as the technical advisory committee, whenever there's any kind of a deliverable and they are looking for feedback, it would all come before you. In terms of the other items, urban renewal is quarterly, or 3 times a year. Times a year, you guys review applications. But we'll see, I guess how the other 4.2, I think that's going to come a little bit out of the downtown strategic plan that we're working through. But again, anytime, this is one I feel like you all would have a lot of input too, because if you're hearing about ideas out there that other cities are implementing, or you have some ideas, we want to start considering that are going to support local entrepreneurship, business in general, those are things we can always be discussing. So I think the downtown strategic plan is going to be very much more very focused and have a lot of structure to it, whereas 4.2 and 4.3 could be a little bit more fluid, and you're bringing ideas to me, I'm bringing ideas to you, sort of a thing.
All ideas?
Cool ideas. I would throw out stuff that we've already been working on.
Yeah.
So one, hotel. So
Over,
Paul's taking that over.
yeah, so that's, I don't, know how we get our fingers back in that unless he.
Does anybody, NJ, can you call up minutes? I know that we discussed this
I
before
can
the end
give
of
you
the
an
year.
update.
Yeah.
So we did have someone looking at doing a text amendment to the light industrial zone to add hotels as a conditional use because of the parcel they were looking at building on. They have since kind of crunched the numbers and seen that because the parcel they were looking at required so many frontage improvements, not going to pencil well for the parcel they were looking at. They have since moved to looking at a different parcel and are in negotiations for that property. It does not require any kind of a text amendment. It would be a conditional use, but they moved forward to conditional use approval of Planning Commission for that use. So it is actively currently right now in process.
But what I meant was the recommended goals we had discussed.
Oh, sorry, I don't.
Discussed earlier, but that's good information.
Do you mean for council or
For this committee,
For this committee and council.
last year?
didn't you have something in the packet, NJ, about?
Yeah, I thought we had something already.
No.
Last year, the two goals were develop a economic development strategic plan, and then the other was advertise the urban renewal grant program. Those
Yeah,
were the two
right.
goals we came up with last year.
There weren't.
Continue without me. I'm gonna do some email searching.
I want to, before we move past the hotel, sounds like it's in the hands, it's in progress. Is there additional something that we want to say we're doing to support that? If so,
just paying attention to it, trying to updates every once in a while. I don't think that, but not letting it languish.
Judy has her hand.
Judy.
Yeah. I've been over here looking through my meeting notes and I'm not finding anything sent with like, here are the goals. I could have overlooked it and I thought maybe it's just me. But I was a bit confused what actually were the goals that we're supposed to be looking at.
does Judy
I
have a
remember-
copy of this?
Judy, I apologize. I didn't think to, I printed out, it was not in the packet. You're right. So you're good
Okay.
there. I printed out the priorities that the city council voted on this Monday because it was not within the packet timeline. I'm going to email that to you real quick.
Okay, thank you very much.
Lashes, NJ?
Is that?
40 lashes.
Would the committee be interested in, once the hotel application is moving forward and going to Planning Commission, would you be interested in knowing that date so that you could like write a letter of support or anything like that?
Yes, if that would help. Yeah.
Okay.
I suspect it'll fly through planning, assuming that they meet criteria.
Correct. And that's how the Planning Commission makes their decisions. But I think it does, help them understand your desire for that amenity in Scappoose as a committee.
I'd be happy to write a letter.
Okay.
if
Okay.
No one else
Keep
will.
you updated.
So besides the hotel, is there anything else in the past that we were working on that you don't feel is
Well,
done yet?
the two from last year, to NJ's point, is develop economic strategic plan, which is 80%. We could finish if we're so inclined.
Lori?
Would it be an appropriate time? I know we've been holding off because the 50-year plan isn't done. But would it be an appropriate time to start looking at the downtown overlay? That seems to me like it may end up being a multiple year project and that it's, and that there may be an opportunity to start at the first level of that with, first of all, getting everybody informed on exactly what's in place and then in doing some outreach, trying to see what would potentially make it better. And then it doesn't necessarily mean that we would try to put it into code at this point.
Right, right.
But
Having
at
an
least-
early look and getting familiar with it, making kind of starting to make a tally of things you might want to
right,
change.
and there might even be a couple very small changes that might help.
Sure.
That could be done outside of the final project if there was something that was glaring. I'm not saying there is,
Sure.
but there might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you could do as a run up to, getting the downtown strategic plan off the ground because, that's like legwork you could be doing ahead of that plan kicking off.
And it takes a little while. I mean, I understand the plan's pretty good, but even I, who've looked at it many times,
Sure.
probably needs to refresh himself.
Sure.
And I do think that the city getting that additional land for parking is going to have a major impact
Mhm.
on how we look at the downtown overlay. But we could at least start the process. I don't see how it could possibly finished without that.
Right.
So what I heard for a goal for us is a downtown overlay review and report out.
So
I think
It's great. Can we add, maybe another idea is also to discuss centralized parking ideas. So like we might have one for the east side, we don't have one for the west side.
Is this separate than a downtown overlay review, or is that going
It,
to be?
it might be part of it, or it might
be part of it, yeah.
be part, but we just talked about the advantages of that. And we know the east side that's the downtown overlay goes right through there. There's nothing, we just talked about some issues with some parking lots and whatever. Should we just include that as part of that?
I think we could do it, but I would do it as a separate line item.
Line item?
Yeah.
You guys okay with that?
When you say separate line item, you mean a separate line item,
Separate goal.
separate goal or separate?
I would have it as a separate goal because I see it as it's a little outside of the box of correctly. Eventually it would get rolled back into potentially, but I think it's going to be like identifying parcels and trying to see if there's a way to make it actually happen. There's a lot of floodplain over there, but that might actually be beneficial in some way. If there was a way to access the floodplain land, you can still possibly use it for parking unless the new laws make it possible. I don't know.
So to be clear, so a goal would be to specifically review parking.
I think maybe because maybe I don't know if you want to discuss some other ideas you had with hourly and all this other stuff.
Well, I don't think we want to get too far ahead on the downtown overlay until we've gotten the green light from staff that like the land that we're hoping to get is done. There isn't a last minute problem.
I wouldn't wait for that. It's been trailing
It's-
for a while,
You feel like-
so
you
I
feel like
think
it's happening.
So what are we hoping this parking is going to do along Highway 30 for the businesses and?
Well, what it's going to do is it's going to allow some increase in density potentially. It's also going to,
Hold on. I don't want to get into the solving the parking thing. The question is, for a goal for this year for this committee, are we going to do something specifically surrounding developing our thoughts on a parking plan for the city? Or is that going to be part of the downtown overlay review we're doing, or?
I'm fine with that.
So I went back through the fall minutes and it looks like what we discussed was the downtown strategic plan and downtown needs. What are the downtown needs? Looking along the downtown needs, I think one group that I see that's excluded from these discussions is the downtown businesses.
I was going to suggest doing more outreach on, so for example, if we don't have the momentum for getting that land from the state, maybe it's time to go to those individual businesses like Columbia Seed, Eden Seed, say, you may have been shut down, like you may have had some development ideas or some other idea where lack of parking or lack of the right of way not being wide enough has hindered you. The city is in discussions with the state to get this thing. It might, if we could encourage you to write a letter of support, here is a form letter, just sign your name at the bottom, send it to these people as a form of encouragement, or how it would directly affect you,
I have a,
benefit you.
I would like to, David, just say, maybe we need to do an outreach. And that's, leave it at that. Like, we might have them all come in.
I think maybe we should
Discuss-
invite them to lunch here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm to lunch here and to talk about some of the issues let them talk about the issues they're having.
And yeah, do an invitation to come here and
Yeah.
talk about their issues and then try to organize it and try to prioritize it and see.
Right,
if
then we could
there's a
feed that back to
reoccurring theme.
Lori and then, go decide what we should do or whatever.
And that could also get rolled into the downtown overlay
Yeah.
though. But also you could do it outside of just downtown overlay. That could also be
Sure.
part of the city in general.
What I heard is a goal for this coming year is increase local business outreach, and we can figure out exactly what that means. But that is something we want to do this year is, because I think last year we did it specifically for the urban renewal, but I think we want to do more to engage the local businesses.
Lori, about 2 years ago, we did a whole street light thing, and then it just kind of went kind of flat. Is that something that we need to do anything else on in our group, or is the city waiting for grant money or something like that?
Jay, where did we?
What we're trying to figure out right now is, and we haven't been working on it in a while, but we're trying to figure out right now exactly how those would get maintained. Because, we kind of share the maintenance of streetlights between city and the PUD, and they don't want understandably, they don't want all of their service cities, having all of these different specs of lights, because then they have to keep them and store them on site. And so if we come up with our own spec and St. Helens has theirs and,
So are they trying to come up with a standardized spec that we pick from or something like that?
that could be a path where if every city has one and Heidi, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but if every city has one standardized decorative streetlight, that could solve the issue of having to understand how to maintain all of the different ones.
Okay.
So the gorilla in the room would either be Columbia River PUD, they would make the decision because they are doing 50% of everyone's maintenance, or St. Helens might be leading.
But does it make sense?
Well, or the city just picks whatever the light they want and then we maintain them. That's the other
Exactly.
option.
That's the other option.
So
Well, with the LED, it's the bulbs, the maintenance is much less. You should
Yeah.
be looking at a 50,000-hour bulb, at least. So
So from a goal perspective, nothing there for us.
that's nothing for us.
Not right now, no.
Why not?
following up.
Well, I will say, if you've got our commitment to supporting everything on the council's list, and then I've got actively support hotel development activities, I've got a downtown overlay review and report out, and I've got local business outreach, or a once a month, volunteer committee. I feel like that's I'm assuming, talk to me, Lori, about the support we will get, the downtown overlay review and report out. Like, is that something you can tee up, or how much self-direction and research are we, other than just showing up to meetings, are we gonna have to do? Probably most?
So
E?
this just came up, so I haven't put any thought to it yet. But, it could go a few different ways. This being a committee goal, I would say this is likely something you guys are leading. And so you're probably doing some homework to read the code before you show up, identifying areas that you have questions about where I can provide some background. Brian's a great resource because he's built in the downtown overlay quite a bit and has been instrumental in some of the amendments that have already been made, working with our previous planners. So let's see how it goes, and then we'll
I did have one other question.
sure.
Does staff have anything that they think we should add to our list? Because you showed us the city, we got this council's goals, but is there something that you guys feel that this should be added to our list, or do you feel like we're good to go?
I think this is adequate, and I think that the things you're addressing are feeding into kind of what council's vision was. Any other thoughts?
Just, you mentioned the strategic plan earlier. Is that still part of finishing that? You said you're 80% done to finish that up, wrap it up. The EDC.
Yeah, I didn't hear anybody put that on the table. So,
I'd say if the work's pretty much done, I recommend that we probably finish it.
It's kind of funny, the strategic plan was a framework for the stuff that we've kind of already bubbled, a lot of it already bubbled to the top. So do you feel that it's worthwhile to kind of put a bow on it, Carl, or?
that's,
I think we need to watch more video.
more videos.
More videos?
No, on that, I mean,
So
it depends on how much
Yeah.
detail you want to put in the report, because where it is right now, there's a bunch of bullets without any context. So we could wrap it with a bow, knowing that, hey, here's a bunch of bullet ideas, come talk to us or council or staff if you want more information on what all these bullets mean and what they entail. So like, I go either way. I think the conversations that it sparked was even more important than the document itself. And at this point, it's going to evolve into a downtown strategic plan for the city and the whole nine yards. So I'm happy that whatever format it's in now, we can republish it, polish it, put a last like closing thought on it. That's not a problem. The problem is how detailed you want to get into all of the options and possibilities and recommendations, because that's where we'll start having multiple meetings and multiple opinions. And if we get into that, a lot of it's good, like doing that right is not like a 1 or 2 meeting thing. That's like another 6 to 8. So,
So do you want to do part of it this year with the idea that it might not get finished this year?
I think what I'd rather do is really publish it in the format it's in, and as people feel a need to refresh it or add detail, we can.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was going to say the economic strategic plan. Yes, we were kind of moving in that direction, but so let's see, different thoughts. So the idea is to kind of take a look at things and see, for example, I believe, and I don't know what I don't know, but some of the urban renewal money got used for water and sewer upgrades, correct, recently? Because there wasn't a budget for it.
So water and sewer projects make up the majority of the plan projects. So
You talk about the reservoir.
there was a
$1 million. That,
portion added.
Yeah, a map amendment to the urban renewal plan that expanded the boundary to allow the reservoir. Yeah.
to allow for urban renewal money to be used. That means, so I guess I'm not saying that anybody is doing anything wrong. It's just that we need to examine how we're having budget shortfalls. Not our thing. So look globally and say, if we're
Are you to
doing-
create Doge? Is that what it is?
if we're if we're doing what we're doing, and we don't have money today, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're definitely not going to have money tomorrow. And so that's the economic strategic plan, is trying to figure out a way not to paint ourselves into a corner in the future. Sorry. So, and the videos will help with that line of thinking.
Here's what I heard. There's kind of like a hanging chad happening. So one of our goals should be to at least close out the economic development strategic plan, whatever that means. And that's 4 goals, and that's plenty. And I think the agenda for next meeting should be more detailed, spend 15 minutes on each one of these and actually talk more tactical. What does all these mean and how do they actually get done?
For the goals, the strategic.
The goals. So for each one, we talked about what does the downtown overlay review and report out even
Okay.
look like? What's the deliverable? How much support do we need? Do we manage it ourselves? Like talking through, like we have a month to think about it. We come back. I like to spend a little time and just talking through way we're going to work on these things.
And NJ, could you email all the committee members a copy of the downtown overlay as it is today?
Go to the map.
Oh,
Oh, it's in the same document, I believe.
Can't believe it. Yeah.
So I think we do need to take a formal vote on these four goals. Okay, it is, I have one is actively support hotel development activities. I have downtown overlay review report out. I have local business outreach and close out the economic development strategic plan.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Woo! 2.3, we're having another vote to move the June 19th meeting. Why do we need to move the June 19th meeting?
It is a city holiday and we will not be working.
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
Oh, it's Juneteenth.
Yes.
I have a,
Say June 19th in a different way and then you'll understand.
I have a question.
So a good day to move this to, I think, would be June 26th, that next week.
Okay, we got a question, discussion before?
Yeah, I have a question to our partners that come occasionally to the meetings. Do you guys feel like we invite you? Are we inviting you too often? Do you like to make it maybe a long period in between? I feel sometimes we get a repeat of probably what was just maybe told to council sometimes. Not, I'm not saying any of you guys personally, but we could hear that information somewhere else. And also sometimes I feel like maybe you come and, feel compelled to tell us some stuff, but do you really feel that structure is working for you guys? I guess that's the question.
Related to June 19th.
Unrelated. I'm saying should it be, every 6 months, or should it be only when there's something that's really important that you want to talk to us about? That's why I asked.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a very hard one because actually today I heard a couple of things that really piqued my curiosity, something I want to take back and share with the board. And who knows when that's going to come up. So that's why I come, because I never actually know when I'm going to hear something that I want to know.
You're invited all the time. I'm talking about when we ask you guys to give your
Oh, to
updates.
give our reports.
Yes. I'm asking.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, okay.
Are we doing it right now?
I was just going to say, I really think we should just give reports when we actually have something new and exciting to talk about.
Why can't we just pull the members?
Can do that.
That sounds great.
I'll make it NJ's responsibility. I'm the-
Wait, do we need
Wait, Christine's not here. I'll make it her
a motion for
responsibility.
that? Or
No.
just, or no?
I don't
Motion-
think so.
motion to
No,
pull.
that's a part of agenda setting, so we don't need to.
Okay.
Just make,
Thank you, Nancy.
moving back to June 19th. Are we moving it? So, well, definitely it has to be moved or canceled because staff is not available. So is June 26th going to be okay? I get a motion to move that,
I'll make a
That-
motion to move it to April 26th.
June?
June.
Sorry. I second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's done. We're gonna move into announcements unless there's absolutely, is there any? Next meetings, March 20th, April 17th, May 15th. And we have an April 26th Earth Day cleanup and celebration happening. So put it on your calendar, sign up. Else anybody would like to talk about? We do have 5 minutes left now because those went really fast. Go. April 5th. He's not on the microphone. April 5th time meeting. Yes. Thank you. That is on my personal calendar, but it is not on this. Are we going to have a table or a booth again or something?
Yes,
Is it at the high school again?
yes. There's always something. There's always the Easter egg hunt or a concert or a senator in town. There's always something.
What's happening in Scappoose?
You could say that, yes.
Just on that weekend.
Yeah.
Spencer, yes.
Any other opens?
You, Carl.
Okay. Thank you. Turned.